Good evening, my withdrawal warriors. Welcome back. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. If you've never seen my channel before, welcome. And I hope the words that I have for you are helpful. So, I have a confession to make. Call me a hypocrite, but I did not go slowly. So, I had advised before. Again, I have to make the disclaimer that none of what I say is medical advice. I speak on my experiences and like advice and techniques that I've either seen before or tried myself. So I speak on my experiences, and if you are withdrawing or plan to, you have to use your discretion. So my experience with my discretion was that I went more quickly on my tapering down than is typically recommended. Some people have to either stop cold turkey or have a purposely accelerated decline in their dose due to complications. I've heard of things like serotonin syndrome. You can look it up if you want, but it can be deadly. And sometimes, there's going to be a reason why somebody has to stop really quickly. So I'll actually back up. You'll hear me talk on my channel a lot about my last withdrawal experience because it was the worst one. I've gone through it a handful of times. When I was on Saffris and I decided to get off of my medication, and just a little bit of background, it was in my planning to have another child, and I did not want to be on these drugs while I was pregnant, even though, side note, I was told it should be fine. So anyway, I planned this out with my doctor, my psychiatrist, who was the one that prescribed Saffris, and I was on at the maximum 10 milligrams once daily, which is, it's usually twice daily, but again, it was off-label anyway. So he gave me a couple of options, and one was that I would step down 2.5 milligrams each month until I was on that last 2.5 milligrams, which is the lowest dose of disintegrating tablet that they make. It's a little more difficult to work with, I suppose, because it's not like a pill that you can kind of like, shave off or measure out, even though, again, in hindsight, I probably would have at least tried to like cut the wafers and store it in a airtight container or something like that. So I went down 2.5 milligrams per month. Everything was fine. I wasn't having any problems. I wasn't having any negative effects at all. My appetite was fine. I was sleeping fine. Everything was as normal, and so it was going really well. I got off of that last 2.5 milligrams. Some would call it like jumping off, or at that point I had like gone cold turkey, if you want to say. And that's when stuff got real bad. And I'm just like smiling just to keep from crying. So as you may have heard in other videos, so the insomnia was relentless. Probably got 2 or 3 hours of sleep in a week. So I don't know if the taper schedule had anything to do with it. The other option, by the way, was that I would step down 2.5 milligrams every other month. So I decided to do the accelerated, as the doctor called it, plan there. I was kind of in a hurry. I guess I was a little impatient. Well, no, I was impatient. So then I got on the trazodone to help with the withdrawal effects, mainly addressing the insomnia from coming off of Saffris. I felt like I had the ground under my feet finally when I got to 300 milligrams, and I was able to sleep, and I held at that for a month, and I worked up the courage to step down from that. So I went down by a quarter of a tablet, which was 100 milligram tablets at the time, so I was taking 25 milligrams off at a time, and I think it was fine for the first 25 milligrams, and I don't remember clearly, but it might have been a week later, I went down another 25 milligrams, and I just started to like not feel right and feel funny, and called a nurse because something didn't feel right. I called a nurse on a Friday, and she said that should be fine, and that what I was stepping down was reasonable. I gave her the details of like how much I was reducing and how long, you know, it had been between each reduction. And so, of course, as I had mentioned before, there's no resources on the weekend, and that's when it started getting pretty bad. So I'm sorry, I can't remember if I went back up a little bit, or I'm pretty sure I just kind of toughed it out because I had the attitude of not going back. I was like that with Sapphiros when I was offered to go back on it. So yeah, the insomnia kicked in really bad again, going down on the trazodone, and that's where I got that really like disgusting, icky, lethargic feeling in my body, and was losing my appetite and was getting nauseous. So then I started discovering online that that I needed to go slower, but also the lower the dose that somebody goes, the more it seems to affect the body. I don't know if anybody's ever like medical community or science has figured out exactly why that is. So I started trying to do the reductions a little bit less at a time. So it's usually advised to hold at that for a minimum of 2 weeks. Some would say a month in between. And again, it all depends on your situation. And I took the gamble, heavy emphasis on the word gamble, that I was going to go quicker in hopes that the misery would be a little bit more, but for less time. There was no way to tell. Instead of a little less misery for a longer amount of time. And again, I was really impatient. I wanted to get pregnant. Side note, that didn't happen. Not that I couldn't, but the circumstances weren't appropriate, just to say the least. So my point is, I pushed it. I reduced on average every 3 days before, kind of bug. Every 3 days, and it was the same cycle. Every time I reduced, I would have problems sleeping for about 2 to 3 nights. It was usually about 3 nights. And then I would just go in all over again. I'd reduce it. Like I was saying, I didn't have a scale, so I was like filing it off with a like an emery board or a nail file. Some people call it that. And just eyeing it up. I would take a picture and try to compare it the day before, and like if I noticed a slight difference, that's kind of what I was going on. It got to that point. When I got a scale, it was much more accurate and easier to be consistent with my reduction. So I rushed it. It was not fun. I can't really say there was any way to avoid the pain or the suffering, or, you know, whatever label we can put on it. But that's my story and that's my experience, and I rushed it and I was impatient and I got what I got. So it's up to you on your journey. Please be careful though. Use discretion. Be really wise. And if you really can't like tolerate whatever the symptoms are, sometimes it's like mental. Like I started, or emotional. I started, I suppose, like feeling again. And I didn't even know that the emotions were so blunted. I didn't even know. At the same time, there was a lot going on in my life. I was really angry over this whole withdrawal experience, along with everything else in life. So there's a lot of emotions going for me. And then I also was reducing, you know, and eventually didn't have this numbing agent, basically. And then besides the emotional thing, you know, there's the physical stuff that comes along with it too. So you know what you can handle, you know, whether it's just like how you know, physically and mentally feel. And, you know, some people have like jobs and families to take care of and stuff like that. And you gotta be able to balance, you know, what you can handle when it comes to managing life and your health at the same time. So use your best judgment. If you can find somebody you trust, if it's not a medical professional, even if you just need to talk to somebody, that even really helps. I've just totally bawled my eyes out in front of people because it was just so difficult, and I had no idea when it was going to end. I couldn't see the light at the end of the tunnel at the time, but at least I was able to just kind of get it out and feel heard and loved and listened to. Tracking symptoms is helpful. I used an app for the most part, pen and paper, whatever works for you. And that can also help you figure out what's appropriate, or at least the results of going down by a certain amount or at a certain rate. So I'll pray for you. I am praying for you. And I love you, and Jesus loves you. And you have a great life ahead of you. Till next time.